We always try to start with something kind of in the realm of anything. When we say ask us anything, Greg and I are both big Spurs fans, San Antonio Spurs basketball. We like to talk about lessons learned from sports. Greg, do you have any kind of insights and thoughts about the Spurs and what you learned from watching them?
Yeah. So as we were kind of thinking through well, what was going to be the question that we add to this to give some color, I was thinking about, why do I love the Spurs and why has it become more meaningful to me as I'm going through my continuous improvement journey. And the Spurs are such a great example of applying a discipline and creating a system and then believing in that system and recognizing that if they follow a process, that the results will be a side effect, so to speak, of that process. You don't just randomly have the most successful professional franchise in all of sports history ever be by some kind of random event. It's kind of this discipline. You don't get to the playoffs 19 seasons in a row because of random events, right? So it's this kind of disciplined realization of that if you follow and stick with a process, that the results will come. An interesting statistic I just read is right now on the Spurs team, there are only 3 people that are in the current roster that were top 30 draft picks. Right. Every single other one is a lower than a top 30, and it just shows that kind of working through a system and working through a process, the sum becomes greater than the parts. And
yeah, I've seen the same thing. I've seen the same thing with the Spurs. I grew up in Detroit. I'm still a Detroit Red Wings fan. This year is the first year they had made the playoffs 25 consecutive seasons. I believe it was 3 Stanley Cup championships in that time, as opposed to 5 championships for the Spurs. The Red Wings have had a fairly similar playbook. The last couple of years, there's been some noticeable decline. Last year, they barely made the playoffs. This year, the writing was on the wall that it wasn't going to happen. But they've gone through multiple coaches, lots and lots of players, but there's been, I think, kind of a system, and they haven't been able to rely on high draft picks because they've always had good teams. So it's a similar dynamic. They have to draft smart. They have to develop players in the minor leagues. They have to have a system, and I think there's a good lesson there.
Great.
One other thing, the other night or about a week ago, I was watching, I don't know if you saw the Spurs play the Warriors, Greg?
Sure.
The Spurs jumped out to a 15-0 lead. They were ahead 23-3. The fans were going crazy. The players seemed to be enjoying it. And there was Coach Popovich. He was just scowling. He was, and I said to my wife, I said, look at Pop. I paused it, and I'm like, why can't he enjoy this? But I think he's just always, I think for one, he never gets too high or too low.
Right. There's
kind of a calming, mellowing effect either way. And I'm sure there was something that he saw when you speak of continuous improvement and striving for perfection. There was something he saw about the way they were playing that made him unhappy. And I think that relentless drive to continue to identify something, I don't think he saw the writing on the wall. I mean, the Spurs ended up losing that game, unfortunately. But I think he sets the tone in some interesting ways.
So it's this constant focus on the process and not the outcome that makes him a great coach and lead a great organization. And that's what he was focusing on. He wasn't focusing on what the score was at that moment. So
yeah. Well, and when we think back to workplaces, a lot of organizations only react and troubleshoot when they get a bad result, instead of say, well, if we've got a bad process and we happen to still get good results, maybe that's luck, and that luck is going to catch up to us. I saw last week the vice president of quality from one of the Dallas hospitals talking about the need to focus on the process and not just react to results. And you do that through checklists. We use a checklist to prepare for these webinars. There's that relentless focus on the process and preventing problems instead of just reacting more quickly. I really appreciated his comments.
Continuous improvement is not sexy. It's just the disciplined way to end up with a really high functioning organization, whether that organization is, a hospital, a summer camp, a software company, or even your family and you as an individual. A disciplined approach will have really satisfying results in the end. So,
yeah.